As I mentioned, Mr. Kondo, the cases reported since June were all cases of suffocation. Talk to us about how, how does a baby die from suffocation during his or her sleep?
Okay, usually what transpires is a baby is either left to lie in a wrong position, or perhaps items or loose items that are left to be in a baby's cot during sleep. And at times also, like now it's winter, we tend to think maybe we are doing better for our children, and then now you overcover the baby, which still, it's a health hazard, yes.
Yeah. Since this news came to light, there's been a lot of contradicting advice on social media in terms of sleeping positions, like you've just mentioned, how you should dress the baby, whether, too much clothing is also a contributing factor, also how many blankets are enough, etc. Please set the record straight for us tonight on what is, the right methods.
Okay, the correct sleeping position for baby within 0 to 6 months is the baby lying on their back. Because when the baby lies on their tummy or lies in front, what happens is it risks them to items closing over their mouth and the nose. And as we know, the nose and the mouth are like the passage to the lungs where oxygenation is coming from.
Yeah.
So in essence, when you let the baby lie on any other side except the back, you are putting the baby at risk of having items obstruct their airway through the mouth or the nose.
So even putting them on their side is a no-no?
It's a health hazard.
Yeah.
Unless it's medically indicated otherwise, or maybe there's a certain condition that is medically not fitting the baby to lie on their back, ensure the baby lies on their back at all times.
Let's talk about the clothing, how a baby should be dressed, and also the amount of blankets you should cover them with. We know it's winter, and like you said, parents might be thinking, I'm trying to do the best by keeping my baby warm, but how many blankets is too many blankets? Because we know that baby's temperature also isn't regulated properly like, full-grown human beings.
Okay, that's a great question on temperature. So with temperature, too much, if the baby is too hot, it's still a health hazard. If it's too cold, it's a health hazard. So you keep it in between.
Yeah.
So, but to be specific, let's say if the baby is having that one cloth item, it's enough. Then you don't have to cover. Like those sleeping, they call them sleeping kits. If the baby is a sleeping kit, you don't have to cover. Yeah. Or maybe if you have to cover with something slight, otherwise the temperature will still go up. And a lot of items in the cot bed, as I said earlier, it's a health hazard.
Yeah.
They risk an accident and obstructing the airway. And once the airway is obstructed, you can't get oxygenation. That's where the death comes in.
Is it true that babies don't feel, between the ages, I think, of 0 to 6 months, they don't feel heat and cold the same way we do? So we might feel like we need to put on layers of clothes because we're feeling cold, but it's but it's not the same for a baby.
Yeah, exactly, because as their thermal regulation it's not fully developed at a young age, and at times, let me say, the preterm born and the one born with low birth weight, they are not born with subcut fat.
Yeah.
And it's the subcut fat that insulates us from the cold. It acts as a cushion from the cold. Now, in the absence of that cushion, so what you should do is, like, you can check on the baby's skin. If the skin is hot or clammy, or the skin is sweaty, then it means the baby is either undergoing too much temperature or high temperature.
Yeah.
And on either extreme, it's very unhealthy and detrimental to the baby.
Is it okay for babies to sleep with, especially newborns, to sleep with the parents in the bed?
If it's possible, you can have a cot bed which is near to the side of the parents' bed, but it have to be definitely in the same room with the caretaker or the parents. However, it's a medical hazard to sleep on the same bed with baby, especially when you are taking medication, or maybe one of the parents is taking alcohol or any drugs, you see. So the baby risks one of the parents maybe sleeping over the baby, and their organs are fragile, they are still developing, so that can cause death.
What is the safe alternative for parents that can't afford, a bedside cot? What is a safe alternative for your baby? Because you can't keep them in the bed, because you said there's also hazards to that. So what safe alternative can a parent take?
A safe alternative, one can design a makeshift, with the materials that you have at home. You can make your own shift bed, as long as it's almost the same height as the baby, because when it's too big, that extra space will allow room for other items to be in the cot bed. So if anything, it's just something as long as you are not on the same bed with the baby.
Yeah.
If it's possible.
If it's possible, yeah.
Yeah.
Just as we're concluding, what is the correct feeding method as well? Because, you know, when you sometimes, some moms who breastfeed their babies will try and burp them and then they don't burp. Does that also cause suffocation if you put your baby down after feeding them without properly burping them?
Okay, with the technique, let's go back to the technique. Okay, the first thing that have to happen is like the baby have to attach to the nipple properly, meaning that whole dark part, the alveolar, must be in the baby's mouth, and the baby's mouth lower lip should be turned outwards.
Okay.
Yeah, every time the baby is suckling, because that will prevent any chance of air entering as the baby is suckling. Yeah.
Right.
And that causes the reflux where the food is being thrown up, and when they enter the airway, still detrimental.
Yeah.
Very good question.
How often should we check up on a sleeping newborn to make sure that, you know, they're not suffocating, that they're not, the temperature isn't too high or too low? How often is enough time to check up on them?
Let's say 2 hourly.
Okay.
Yeah, let's say 2 hourly. As long as it's under normal condition, baby haven't suffered maybe from any illness in the last few weeks, at least 2 hourly.
Okay.
Yeah, at least 2 hourly.
Mr. Kondo, thank you so much for being here with us this evening. It was lovely speaking to you.
It's an honor.